Hey guys, are you ready to boost your garden's productivity? In today's video, I'm going to walk you through how to amend your soil in your vegetable garden to promote healthier plants and bigger harvests. I'll share with you some key amendments and how and when to apply them, and then I'll also share a crucial tip on how to preserve your soil health throughout the growing season. Let's get into it. First, let's talk about why we might need to amend the soil in our gardens. Amending your soil is essential for creating an environment for your plants to thrive. During my second growing season in a raised bed, I actually failed to amend my soil. I didn't even know about amending soil, and I had plants with stunted growth. They were taking months longer than they should to reach harvest, and I was getting really frustrated. Amending your soil is a way to add organic matter back into your garden so that your plants can thrive again. Healthier and stronger plants can resist diseases a lot better than some stunted plants and some plants that are just struggling to take off. You'll also notice in something like a raised bed that your soil level will drop dramatically. So in between seasons, I will notice like probably a 2-inch drop in the soil level, and that's because the plants are consuming that organic matter and the soil is actually compacting down a bit. As gardeners, we need to be prioritizing soil health, and we do that by adding organic matter back into the garden. One of the most obvious ways to add organic matter back into your garden is using organic compost. Now this season I had about 100 square feet of garden space that each needed about 2 inches of compost added to the top, so I went and got bulk organic compost from a local place here in Melbourne, Florida. By buying in bulk, I was able to save so much money. It only cost me like $25 for a truck bed. But if you were to buy bags of organic compost, it would end up costing quite a bit more for the same amount of organic matter. Now you might not be dealing with 100 square feet of garden. Maybe you have more, maybe you have less. So you can certainly buy bags. If you plan to buy bags of organic compost, I recommend trying a variety of organic composts. You can get some composted manure from chickens or cows. You can get some mushroom compost, or even like something like the land and sea type compost. Although I would say it's ideal to get a variety of sources of organic compost, it's okay to take a more practical approach if something's not available near you. There are plenty of gardeners on YouTube that have successful gardens, and all they've done is buy the Black Cow composted manure from their local big box store and amended their soil with that. Adding that organic matter back into your gardens is going to really help the populations of the beneficial insects. So you can get your beneficial microorganism population up and even your earthworm population up, both of which will help your garden in terms of pests and productivity. Now, if you're trying to amend your soil with inches and inches of compost, I want to suggest that you remove all of the previous plants. I've tried to work around existing plants in the garden and work it into the soil around them. It's just really hard work if you're trying to add that much compost and you're maneuvering around existing plants. So what I did this time was remove my drip irrigation, removed my mulch, and then I applied a lot, like 2 to 3 inches a lot of organic compost to the top of the raised bed. Now compost is a mixture of browns and greens. A lot of the greens are going to come from your kitchen scraps, and a lot of your browns are going to come from around your yard, like your twigs and your branches and your dried up leaves. This is why it's a great idea for you to consider a way to do compost at home. Whether that's a big traditional compost bin outside, or it could be an electric composter that sits on your countertop. Either way, it could help you make use of your kitchen scraps and help improve the health of your garden. The next amendment that you should highly consider adding to your garden are worm castings. They're fairly affordable if you just want to buy a bag off Amazon. You can get 15 pounds of worm castings for about $26, and they'll last you a long time. Worm castings are naturally slow release and they're very mild. For their NPK, they're usually 100, so they're the highest in nitrogen, but they're really very mild, and it's very hard to overdo worm castings in your garden. Now, if you're interested in kind of a clean way of doing composting, you can add one of these in-bed worm composting bins. I'll link a video right here to how to create your in-bed worm composting bin. This is so easy because all you've got to do is add your greens and browns in here, buy a pack of red wiggler worms, and then they'll break down that food and they'll feed your soil, and then you can harvest your earthworm castings straight out of this bin. If you're totally new to the idea of vermicomposting, you can also check out my video right here with an introduction to vermicomposting. It explains what it is, how it works, and different methods that people use to do it. The worm castings are going to improve the soil structure, improve the water retention, and also help prevent diseases. I've even seen some videos that say a heavy application of worm castings will help with the dreaded root knot nematodes that we have here in Florida. So don't skip out on adding worm castings when you're amending your garden soil. The next soil amendment I want to talk through is crab meal. Crab meal is also an all-natural, organic, slow-release fertilizer, and its NPK numbers are usually around like 430, which means it has nitrogen and phosphorus. Nitrogen is going to help your plants create that greenery, so it's really high in nutrients for some of your leafy greens and also great for some of your larger plants like tomatoes or eggplant or cucumber. Crab meal is a little more expensive than your worm castings though. If I go to Amazon.com and I look up crab meal, I'm finding 5 pounds for about $29. I recently bought this and I used the entire 5-pound box to cover 100 square feet of garden space. But the primary reason you should consider using crab meal is because of how the chitin in crab meal helps increase the populations of the beneficial microorganisms that fight against your plant parasitic nematodes, like your root knot nematodes. Root knot nematodes are a common soil-borne pest in Florida, and it's something that will cause root galling and yellowing leaves and stunted growth. So if you've experienced anything like this in the past, but you haven't been able to diagnose exactly why, check out my video right here about my battle plan for fighting against root knot nematodes. To give you a hint, crab meal is one of the most highly recommended methods of fighting root knot nematodes in your home garden. Now, along with all of those nutrients that it's going to give you, it also has up to 14% calcium. Now, calcium is one of those like vitamins for plants that really helps improve the cell wall structure of the plants. This calcium will help give you really healthy plants that are strong enough to fight against some of the things they might encounter during their growth cycle. The next soil amendment I want to bring to your attention is wood ash. Now here in Florida, we're always outside barbecuing. I've got this ceramic grill and we always burn 100% jumbo lump charcoal, and the wood ash falls to the bottom of the grill and then I can collect it into a bucket. Now once I feel like that bucket's getting full enough, I spread that wood ash throughout the garden. So similar to using kitchen scraps, this is a way for me to make use of something that I'm already buying in my home for something else. The wood ash added to your garden is going to add potassium, and it will even kill slugs and snails that might go after some of your plants. Wood ash also helps with water retention and drainage in your raised bed. So if you have access to wood ash from a charcoal burning grill or from a fire pit, consider adding it to your gardens. On that train of thought, trying to make use of kitchen scraps and other things around your house for dual purpose in the garden, something that I usually do is collect my eggshells every morning. My husband and I eat eggs every single morning, so we're always getting eggshells. So every morning I'll rinse them out, let them dry, and then I'll collect them in this jar that sits on my counter. I even labeled it so it says eggshells for garden. I'll keep adding eggshells to this and I'll push it down as I need to create a little more space. Once it gets really full, I'll use my blender to blend it up, and then I'll have a nice eggshell powder that I can spread throughout the garden and even put in my vermicompost bins if I wanted to. Eggshells are another source of organic matter for your garden, and it increases that soil structure and water retention. As far as using it in your vermicompost bins, it just creates a little extra grit in that mixture for your worms, and they really like to decompose it. I've tried in the past just putting eggshells instead of eggshell powder in there, and the eggshells just take a really long time to break down. So I stopped doing that and decided I wanted to go for a powder instead. So if you or someone in your family eats a lot of eggs, consider saving your eggshells for use in the garden. Now that we know what amendments to use for our vegetable garden soil, I want to point out something that you should do to protect that soil. If you've watched gardening videos before, I'm sure you've heard of it. The answer is mulch. If I left the soil bare, it would just be baking in the hot Florida sun, and the top layer would certainly dry out much quicker, and you wouldn't see much life at all at the top of the soil. Now, since I've protected the soil with mulch, the soil is a really nice moisture level underneath. Let's take a look. Now, it's not uncommon for me to find worms as well when I'm digging around in here. Oh, see, there's a worm right there. Just right there, just beneath the mulch. You can see this is moist. This is not dry soil. It's perfect for plants. So now we know what amendments to use in our soil and why. We know how to protect it with mulch, but what I haven't really discussed is when you should be amending your soil. I like to do it in between seasons, so I've pulled all of the summer plants and then I amended the soil, and then I waited about 3 weeks before any kind of direct sow or transplant. Now hit that subscribe button and I'll see you guys in my next videos about transplanting seedlings and dealing with damping off. See you next time, guys.